This is our family's embarrassment, my big sister, everyone. Sienna didn't say it with a sneer. She said it with a smile so bright it could have lit up the entire Napa Valley winery. She said it while holding a glass of vintage Cristal that I, the embarrassment, had personally secured after the original shipment was flagged by a customs glitch I spent 48 hours fixing. In that moment, under the glow of $1,000 candles, the air in the room didn't just turn cold, it vanished. I watched my mother's face break into a practiced, tinkling laugh, and my father's chest swell with that peculiar brand of aristocratic pride that only truly cruel people mistake for honesty. They expected me to shrink. They expected the practical one to disappear into the shadows of the fermentation tanks. But then, I saw him. Arthur Sterling. The man the entire guest list had been preening for all night. He wasn't laughing. He looked at me, and for the first time in 30 years, the golden child stage started to crack. Before I tell you how I tore her perfect world down, you need to understand the mythology of the Vance family. In our house, there was a strict currency, charm. Sienna was a billionaire in it. She was the sparkle, the one who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like the sun had just come out. I was the shadow. I was the one who checked the fine print, the one who remembered the allergies, the one who negotiated the vendor disputes, and the one who ensured the bills were paid so the sparkle never had to deal with the grime of reality. To my parents, my competence wasn't a talent, it was a utility. Like a high-end dishwasher, you only notice it when it stops working. 3 months before the wedding, Sienna called me, not to invite me to be her maid of honor. She called because the Napa resort contract had a punitive cancellation clause her creative assistant had missed. The live quartet she'd bragged about on Instagram hadn't actually been booked. The floral arrangements were over budget by $60,000. Evie, you're so good at the boring stuff, she'd said, her voice like honey over broken glass. Just fix it. It's for the family image, right? I spent 4 weeks on the phone with insurance adjusters and resort lawyers. I personally wired a deposit to a photographer in Paris who was threatening to walk. I did it because for 42 years I had been conditioned to believe that my value was tied to my silence. The night of the reception, the winery looked like a dream. Every petal was in place, every note from the string quartet was perfect. Sienna moved through the crowd like a queen, taking credit for the flawless planning she hadn't touched. Then came the moment. The embarrassment comment. My father stepped forward, his voice booming for the benefit of the surrounding executives. We're just glad Elena could find the time to join us. Usually she's too busy with whatever it is people like her do in dark offices. A ripple of polite, cruel laughter went through the circle. Sienna leaned in, whispering loud enough for the front row to hear. Don't mind her, she's always been the difficult one. Some people just aren't meant for the spotlight. I felt the familiar sting, the old urge to retreat. But then Arthur Sterling stepped into the light. He was the CEO of Mercer Sterling Global, a man whose net worth was rivaled only by his reputation for being an absolute shark. My sister had spent months trying to get him to attend this wedding, hoping to leverage his presence into a promotion at her firm. Arthur didn't look at Sienna. He looked straight at me. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice had a weight that silenced the room. "I didn't realize you were part of this family." Sienna's smile didn't just fade, it curdled. "Oh, Arthur, you know Elena. She does some consulting. Nothing on your level, of course." Arthur didn't blink. "Nothing on my level?" Miss Vance is the reason my firm survived the 2018 liquidity crisis. Her operational risk report is still used as the gold standard in our boardrooms. I've spent 3 years trying to put her on a permanent retainer, but she's notoriously selective about who she helps. The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. My mother dropped her appetizer. My father's face went a dusty shade of gray. And Sienna? For the first time in her life, she looked small. I didn't stay for the cake. I didn't stay for the toasts. I drove back to my hotel with the windows down, the cool California air washing the smell of expensive lilies and cheap lies off my skin. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. For years, I had accepted their version of the story. I was the embarrassment because I didn't perform. I was the difficult one because I demanded facts over feelings. But as I watched the winery disappear in the rearview mirror, I realized they hadn't been protecting me from the world. They had been protecting themselves from the truth of their own incompetence. A week later, I was back in San Francisco. My firm, Vance Strategic, handles the things wealthy people want to hide: compliance failures, internal fraud, and executive cleanups. My assistant buzzed. Arthur Sterling is on line 1. He says it's about a matter of family interest. Arthur didn't come to my office to talk about the wedding. He came with a digital folder and a look of deep professional concern. "Elena," he said, sitting across from my desk, "I'm in the middle of a major acquisition. Your sister's department is one of the pillars of the target company, but my internal auditors just flagged a pattern." He slid a tablet across the desk. It was a forensic accounting nightmare. Expense reports for client entertainment that match the dates of her bridal showers, I whispered, scrolling through the line items. Luxury spa packages billed as vendor consultation, upgraded flights for her honeymoon, billed to a project code that doesn't exist. But that wasn't the worst part. "Look at the intellectual property logs," Arthur said. I opened the folder labeled Project Phoenix. It was a brilliant, high-retention engagement strategy for the resort portfolio. It was the reason Sienna was being hailed as a visionary. The timestamps on the original drafts belonged to an analyst named Ethan Cole, but the final deck, the one sent to the board, had been scrubbed of his name. It had been replaced by Sienna's. "She didn't just spend the company's money on her wedding," I said, the pattern clicking into place with a cold, rhythmic thud. "She stole the career of a junior staffer to build her own pedestal." Arthur leaned back. "I can't have my team lead this investigation. It's too political. I need someone who understands hidden fractures, someone who doesn't let charm interfere with structure." He offered me a 6-month contract with full investigative authority. "If I do this," I said, "I won't be doing it as her sister. I'll be doing it as a forensic consultant. I won't protect her. I won't soften the blow. When the walls come down, I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly who was holding the hammer." Arthur nodded. "That's exactly why I'm here. But there's one more thing you should know, Elena. We found a series of encrypted outgoing emails from her workstation. They weren't sent to vendors. They were sent to an anonymous domain." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. "What was in them?" "Your client list," Arthur replied, "and your private audit methodologies. It looks like she wasn't just stealing from her company. She was preparing to dismantle yours." I looked out at the San Francisco skyline. The war hadn't started at the wedding. It had started years ago, in the silence of my own house. But this time, I wasn't the fixer. I was the storm. Arrogant people always make the same mistake. They assume that because they are the loudest in the room, nobody meticulous is paying attention. For 3 days, I didn't sleep. I lived in the digital shadows of my sister's corporate life. As a forensic consultant, I don't look for emotions. I look for patterns. And Sienna's patterns were as loud as her wedding fireworks. The embezzlement wasn't just a few spa days. It was a lifestyle. She had created a network of ghost vendors, event design companies that didn't exist, with mailing addresses linked to her college friends. She would approve their inflated invoices, and the kickbacks would find their way into her personal accounts. It was the Napa Wedding Fund, subsidized by Mercer Sterling's acquisition budget. But it was the theft of Ethan Cole's work that truly turned my stomach. I found the original file metadata. Ethan had created the Phoenix engagement strategy on a Tuesday night at 11 p.m. Sienna had copied the file 3 hours later, changed the author name in the document properties, and deleted Ethan's access to the shared drive. She wasn't a visionary. She was a scavenger. By Wednesday, Sienna knew the walls were closing in. Someone had tipped her off that an external auditor was digging. She didn't know it was me. Not yet. She did what she always did when cornered. She improvised. She reached out to me at 9 p.m. Her voice on the phone was a haunting echo of our childhood, sweet, fragile, the sound of a golden child about to ask for a favor. Evie, she whispered, I'm in trouble. Some jealous people at work are trying to frame me. I need you to tell Arthur that we collaborated on those hospitality ideas years ago. Just tell them it was a family brainstorming session. Please, for Mom and Dad. I can't do that, Sienna, I said. My voice didn't shake. You've always hated me, she snapped, the mask finally slipping. You've always been the martyr, sitting in your dark office while I actually lived. If I go down, I'm taking the family name with me. Is that what you want? I hung up. 2 hours later, the first forged email appeared in the Mercer Sterling server. It was a clever attempt for an amateur, an email, supposedly from me to her, sent 6 months ago. In it, I gave her advice on how to discreetly classify wedding expenses as corporate research. The domain looked like mine, https://www.google.com/search?q equals vancystrategic.com instead of vancystrategic.com. But a single character difference. She was trying to make me her accomplice. If I was the one who taught her how to cheat, my investigation would be dismissed as a conflict of interest, and I would be delicensed. She was willing to destroy my entire career to save her image. I didn't panic. In forensic accounting, we have a saying, the headers never lie. I traced the IP address of the sender. It didn't come from my server. It came from a guest Wi-Fi at a boutique hotel in Napa, the same one where Sienna was spending her post-wedding mini-moon. The formal review happened on a Tuesday. The glass conference room at the Mercer Sterling headquarters felt like a pressurized chamber. Sienna arrived in a white power suit, looking every bit the victimized executive. She sat across from Arthur Sterling and the head of legal, her expensive bag placed precisely on the table. I've been framed, she began, her eyes brimming with practiced tears. My own sister Elena has been harboring a lifelong resentment. She even sent me emails suggesting these expense structures, and now she's using them against me. She slid the printed forged emails across the table. Arthur didn't even look at them. He looked at me. I stood up and opened my laptop. I didn't look at my sister. I looked at the data projected on the wall. This is the X-header information from the emails Miss Vance just provided, I said, my voice clinical. The relay points show these messages were created 3 days ago, not 6 months. Furthermore, the MAC address associated with the sending device matches the laptop registered to Sienna Vance's office workstation. I clicked to the next slide. And this is the metadata from the Phoenix Project. The original author is Ethan Cole. The deletion logs show Sienna Vance manually removed his name at 2:14 a.m. on June 12th. The silence in the room was absolute. Sienna's face went from pale to a ghostly, translucent white. Employment is terminated. Effective immediately, the legal head said, his voice devoid of emotion. We will be seeking full civil recovery for the embezzled funds, and the matter of the forgery, now that will be referred to the district attorney. Sienna didn't cry then. She looked at me with a hatred so pure it felt like a physical weight. You've always been a ghost, Elena. Now you've finally managed to haunt someone. I'm not a ghost, Sienna, I replied. I'm the person who actually did the work. You just forgot I existed. 2 months later, the wreckage was everywhere. Sienna had lost her job, her reputation in the industry was incinerated, and Derek, the husband she had lied to for years, had filed for divorce. My parents called an emergency dinner at my Aunt Judith's house in Marin County. They expected a reconciliation. They expected me to use my connections to make the DA go away. The dinner started with my father slamming his hand on the table. How could you do this to your sister, Elena? Family protects family. You've ruined her life over some paperwork errors. My mother was sobbing, clutching Sienna's hand. She was the one with the bright future. You were always so cold, so selfish. I was about to speak when Aunt Judith set her fork down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Be quiet, both of you, Judith said. She was the oldest of my father's siblings, the one who held the family estate. Elena didn't ruin Sienna, Judith continued, looking directly at my parents. Sienna ruined herself, but you two, you built the stage for it, and you did it with Elena's money. The room went still. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. Judith pulled a folder from her sideboard. "Your grandparents didn't just leave a trust for Sienna, they left an equal share for both of you. But because you were the difficult one, and your parents had power of attorney, they quietly diverted your inheritance into Sienna's life. Your college fund paid for her finishing school. Your down payment fund paid for her first luxury car. Even the deposit for her Napa wedding, it came from a savings account your grandfather started for you when you were 6. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother just kept crying, but the sound felt different now. It sounded like guilt. "We just wanted her to have a chance," my father whispered. "She had so much potential. We thought you were fine on your own. You were always so practical." "Practical," I repeated. The word felt like ash in my mouth. "You didn't think I was practical. You thought I was a resource. You stole my past to buy her a fake future." Sienna looked at me then, and for the first time, I didn't see a villain. I saw a hollow shell. She had lived a life built on a foundation of theft, my work, my money, Ethan's talent. Without it, there was nothing left. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. I changed my number. I sold my share of the Vance family name back to them and used the money to double the size of my firm. I hired Ethan Cole as my head of operations. He's the best analyst I've ever seen. My parents still try to email. They say they've forgiven me for being so harsh. They still don't get it. Forgiveness implies I did something wrong. I didn't. I just stopped participating in a lie. Sienna moved back into her old bedroom at my parents' house. The golden child's crown was gone, replaced by the crushing weight of ordinary consequences. People ask me if I regret tearing it all down. They ask if I miss my family. I tell them the same thing I told Arthur Sterling the day he hired me. Integrity isn't something you have when things are easy. It's what's left when everything else is gone. I'm no longer the invisible fixer. I'm Elena Vance. And for the first time in 42 the life I'm living is finally, undeniably, mine.